Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm Paul and with the Dicey Review, and today we're going to be looking at the 2 to 4 player game Roller Coaster Rush being released by Pandasaurus Games. Now in Roller Coaster Rush, you play the role of someone who's trying to build the most exciting and appealing roller coaster that you can to demo for investors and eventually put on a grand opening to wow everyone who comes to your roller coaster. How does it play? Well, let's get to the table and find out. Roller Coaster Rush comes with all of the components that you see here, including 4 investor cards, 9 Showstopper cards, 19 blueprint cards, 1 active player marker, a number of coins in denominations of 1 and 5, and 4 marbles in the different player colors. The game also comes with a number of different track pieces that the players will use throughout the game to construct their coasters. To begin setup, first shuffle up and deal out a number of blueprint cards depending on the player count. Then each player will place these cards with the blueprint side face up in their play area. Next, give each player $20, an investor card that they would place in their play area on the uninterested side, and a marble in their player color. Each player then gathers 1 launch piece and 1 of the track pieces that matches each one of their blueprint cards. Then each player would construct a blueprint of a roller coaster, including their launch piece and all of the pieces listed on their blueprint cards, in whatever way they would like. This roller coaster is going to be tested and constructed throughout gameplay, so the final makeup of each player's roller coaster may change. But it could look something like this, for example. Each blueprint card not used would be put back into the box. It won't be used during this game. It's important to note that players have to use all of the track pieces from the cards that they were dealt during setup, if possible. If it's not possible for players to build a roller coaster using the track pieces they were dealt during setup, everyone will shuffle their blueprint cards together, and those will be redealt later to all of the players until everyone can legally build a coaster again. Once everyone has been dealt their cards, gathered their money, and built their blueprint roller coaster, place the remaining coins in the middle of the table as a supply, and randomly determine a player who will receive the active player marker and take the first turn. After this is done, you're ready to play. In a game of Roller Coaster Rush, players will be bidding on blueprint cards to fully construct them and build a finalized roller coaster. As soon as every track piece has been bid on and constructed, the game will end. Beginning with the active player and then going clockwise in direction, each player will take a turn. And on a player's turn, they can either call an auction or demo for investors. Let's look at the first action that a player could possibly take on their turn, calling an auction. To call an auction, a player can choose any blueprint card around the table, either theirs or their opponent's, and put that track piece up for auction. So for instance, on this player's turn, if they wanted to, they could try and auction off one of their own pieces or the piece of one of their opponents. Let's say, for instance, this player wants to auction off this K track piece right here. The player whose piece is being auctioned would either push it up or down to show that this is the track piece that's currently being bid on. Then all players will secretly decide how much of their money they want to bid for this track piece. They can either hide the amount in their hand or place it behind their launch piece, whatever works best for the table. Once everyone's decided how much they want to bid, everyone would simultaneously reveal their bid. The player with the highest bid would win the auction and return their coins to the bank. Any player who didn't win the auction would return their money to their personal supply. If a player loses a track piece, like in this example here, they would give the player who won the auction the card and the appropriate track piece from their coaster blueprint. Any player who wins a track piece can add this new track piece to any part of their coaster. So for instance, they could add it to their coaster like this. And the card from the appropriate roller coaster track piece would then be put in their play area and flipped over to its constructed side. A constructed roller coaster piece can't be bid on and can't be taken from a player's roller coaster. It's also important to note that if a player ever loses a track piece from their roller coaster, they can rebuild their roller coaster in any way that they want. If a player wins a roller coaster track piece, they can only add the new piece. They can't reconstruct the other part of their roller coaster. After an auction is completed, the player who wins the auction and any player who lost a track piece both flip their investor card to show the interested side. Then the next player in clockwise order would receive the active player marker. It's important to note that players don't have to bid on a track piece if they don't want to, so a bid of 0 is perfectly legal. If there's ever a tie when players are bidding for a track piece, a side auction will be held. Any players not involved in that tie would take their money back, and then the tied players would hold another round of secret bidding to determine who's the winner. Each player would put their initial bid on the table, and then decide in secret how much they would like to add to that bid. Once players have decided, they would reveal their new bids. And whoever has the highest new bid would win the auction and return their money to the bank just like normal. Any player who didn't win the auction would take their money back just like normal, and if there's another tie, another side auction would be held until there's a winner. And it's always important to note that players can decide to bid no money in a side auction or in an initial auction. A bid of nothing is always legal. And if there's a case where no one bids anything at all whenever a track piece is called to auction, whoever has the fewest track pieces in their roller coaster would win that track piece. The other action that a player could take on their turn is demoing for investors. Players can only take this action if their investor card shows the interested side. So for instance, this player, if they wanted to, could demo for investors. When players demo for investors, they get to take their marble and drop it along their coaster up to 2 times. For each piece of their roller coaster after their launch piece that their marble rolls through or over, the player would get $1 from the bank. So in this example, the player would receive $4. It's also important to note that a player gets to drop their marble twice and gets to keep the better result. So as an example, if someone took their first drop and dropped their marble and it didn't roll well, they could then have another chance to drop their marble and hope that it completes more pieces. This is also applicable if someone has a very good roll on their first drop and then a worse roll on their second drop. They get to keep the better roll. After a player has dropped their marble up to 2 times and kept the better result, and collected their money from the bank, the player would flip their investor card to the uninterested side, pass the active player marker to the next player in clockwise direction, and then their turn would be over. Play will continue in this way until all track pieces have been auctioned and each player's coaster is fully constructed. At that point, it would be time for the grand opening. During the grand opening, each player will run their roller coaster in the exact same way that they demo for investors. So for instance, this player would get to drop their marble twice. Just like when demoing for investors, each player gets to keep the better result from their 2 drops. And then players would score a point for every flag in each roller coaster piece that their marble fully rolled through or over. So in our example, on our second drop, this player was able to roll through all of their roller coaster pieces, which would give them a total score of 15 points. Once each player has scored, whoever has the most points would be the winner. And if there's a tie, the player with the most money wins. And if there's still a tie, the player with the most track pieces would win. And if there's still a tie after that, then the tied players would share the victory. Once players are comfortable with the basic game rules, they can add an additional challenge to the game with Showstopper cards. To incorporate Showstopper cards, during setup, players would shuffle up all of the Showstopper cards and then reveal one more than the player count in the middle of the table. Then, in reverse turn order, starting with the last player and then in counterclockwise direction, each player will take one Showstopper card and place it face up in front of themselves, and the card that isn't selected would be returned to the box. Showstopper cards will provide players a number of different objectives that they can potentially meet to score additional points at the end of the game during the grand opening. For instance, this Showstopper card would give 4 additional points if the player has the most money remaining at the end of the game. This Showstopper card would give additional points at the end of the game if tracks in a certain alphabetical order are completed during the grand opening. And this Showstopper card would give 2 additional points during the grand opening for each piece of a segment that's completed that has 1 more flag than the last piece. Alright everybody, that was our video. Hopefully it was helpful and hopefully it was informative. If you still have any questions about how to play the game, please comment below or email me directly at thedicey@gmail.com and I'll make sure to answer those questions for you if I can. You can always connect with us on social media or by visiting our Board Game Geek Guild. And as usual, if you find this content helpful, if you find what I'm doing useful, make sure to subscribe to the channel, give this video a thumbs up, and hit the bell icon to be notified whenever we put out new content. All right, everybody, thanks so much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you at the table.